Who was Cain's mysterious wife? And what happened to the daughters of Adam and Eve we rarely hear about? The Bible tells us Cain fled after killing Abel, but it leaves out what seems like an obvious question. Where did his wife come from? Hidden between the lines of Genesis lies a forgotten family tree, hinting at sisters and daughters whose names were lost to time. These ancient women carried the human story forward, yet history barely remembers them. Let us uncover the secrets of Cain's wife and the untold legacy of Adam and Eve's daughters, stories that challenge what we think we know. A biblical journey through Scripture's most intriguing mystery. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain made love to his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Genesis 4:16-17. These words from Genesis have sparked one of the most enduring mysteries in biblical scholarship. In just 2 verses, we witness Cain's exile and almost immediately encounter his wife, a woman who appears in the narrative as if from nowhere. Who was she? Where did she come from? And what does her existence tell us about the early chapters of human history as recorded in Scripture? This question has captivated theologians, scholars, and curious readers for millennia. It's a mystery that takes us deep into the heart of Genesis, where we must look beyond the familiar names of Adam, Eve, Cain, and able to discover the forgotten daughters who walked the earth in humanity's earliest days. The mystery unveiled. Cain has just committed the world's first crime, slaying his brother Abel in a fit of jealous rage. God's judgment is swift and severe. Cain is cursed to be a restless wanderer, forever separated from the ground that once yielded its crops to him. Yet even in his punishment, God shows mercy, placing a protective mark upon Cain so that no one who finds him will kill him. But here's where the mystery deepens. As Cain departs from the Lord's presence, heading east to the land of Nod, the text suddenly mentions his wife. No introduction, no explanation, no genealogical note. She simply appears, as if the author assumed his readers would understand exactly who she was. This brief mention has troubled readers throughout history. Early church fathers grappled with it. Medieval scholars debated it. Modern theologians continue to explore its implications. The question echoes through the ages. If Adam and Eve were the first humans, and their sons Cain and Abel were the first of their children mentioned by name, where exactly did Cain's wife come from? The forgotten daughters, reading between the lines. The answer, according to most biblical scholars, lies in what Scripture tells us, and more importantly, what it doesn't tell us. The Bible, particularly in its early chapters, is remarkably selective in its storytelling. It focuses on the line of promise, the key figures in God's unfolding plan, rather than providing exhaustive genealogical records. Consider what Genesis 5:4 reveals. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. This single verse opens a window into a much larger reality. Adam and Eve didn't have just 3 sons. They had many children over the course of Adam's 930-year lifespan. Sons and daughters whose names we'll never know, whose stories remain untold, but whose existence is crucial to understanding how humanity populated the earth. The biblical narrative focuses on the sons because they carry the genealogical line forward, but the daughters were there too, living, breathing, marrying, bearing children, and participating in the grand drama of early human history. They were the forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve, and one of them most likely became Cain's wife. A tale of 2 families. To understand this better, we need to imagine the world of the first family. Adam and Eve, expelled from Eden, begin their life in a world that is still good but now touched by the curse of sin. They have children, lots of them. The text suggests that childbearing was one of the primary activities of early humanity, as God's command to be fruitful and multiply. Genesis 1:28 was taken seriously. In this expanding family, we meet Cain, described as a worker of the ground, and Abel, a keeper of sheep. These aren't just job descriptions. They represent the beginning of human civilization, the first division of labor, the earliest specialization of skills. But they weren't alone. Around them were siblings, brothers and sisters, all children of Adam and Eve. The story takes a tragic turn when Cain's offering is not accepted by God while Abel's is. The text doesn't explicitly tell us why. Perhaps it was Cain's heart attitude, perhaps the nature of his sacrifice, or perhaps it was simply God's sovereign choice. What we know is that Cain's response reveals the corruption that sin has brought into the human heart. "Why are you angry?" God asks Cain. "Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Genesis 4:6-7. It's a moment of incredible tension. God offers Cain a choice, a chance to master the sin that is threatening to consume him. But Cain chooses differently. He leads his brother into the field and kills him, committing the first crime in human history. The land of Nod, a new beginning. After God's judgment, Cain journeys to the land of Nod, whose name means wandering. But even in his exile, Cain is not alone. The text tells us he knew his wife there, suggesting either that she accompanied him or that he found her there. Given what we know about early human migration patterns and the biblical narrative, it's most likely that she was already his wife, one of his sisters, a daughter of Adam and Eve. This raises questions that make modern readers uncomfortable. Marriage between siblings. In our contemporary context, such relationships are forbidden and considered morally wrong. But we must understand that the world of Cain was radically different from our own. First, there was no other choice. If humanity was to survive and multiply, the children of Adam and Eve had to marry each other. Second, the genetic problems we associate with close intermarriage today would not have been present in the early generations. The human genome had not yet accumulated the mutations that make such marriages dangerous today. Third, and most importantly, God had not yet given the laws that would later forbid such marriages. The prohibition against marrying close relatives doesn't appear until the Mosaic Law, given centuries later through Moses. What was necessary in the beginning became forbidden once humanity had grown large enough to make such restrictions feasible. The city builder. In the land of Nod, something remarkable happens. Cain and his wife have a son named Enoch, and Cain builds a city, naming it after his son. Think about the significance of this. The world's first criminal becomes the world's first city builder. The man cursed to be a wanderer creates the first permanent settlement. This isn't just historical trivia. It's a profound statement about human nature and God's grace. Even in judgment, God allows Cain to participate in the cultural mandate to subdue the earth. Even in exile, Cain contributes to human civilization. The city he builds becomes the foundation for all future urban development. But who lived in this city? Cain and his wife couldn't populate it alone. The text implies that other family members joined them, more sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, more forgotten siblings whose names we don't know but whose presence was essential to the story. The lineage of Lamech. The narrative continues with Cain's descendants, and we encounter more wives, more daughters, more women whose names have been preserved in Scripture. Lamech, Cain's descendant, takes 2 wives, Adah and Zillah. Their children become the fathers of those who live in tents and keep livestock, those who play the lyre and pipe, and those who forge tools of bronze and iron. This genealogy reveals something beautiful. Even in the line of Cain, the line marked by exile, God allows human culture to flourish. Music, metallurgy, animal husbandry, all of these advances come through Cain's descendants. The forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve, through their marriages and their children, contribute to the development of human civilization. The theological implications. The story of Cain's wife and the forgotten daughters raises profound theological questions. If humanity spread across the earth through the intermarriage of siblings, what does this say about human dignity? How do we understand the image of God in humanity's earliest generations? The biblical answer is both simple and profound. Every human being, regardless of their origin or circumstances, bears the image of God. Cain's wife, unnamed though she may be, was created in God's image. The forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve, however obscure their roles in the biblical narrative, were bearers of divine image and participants in God's plan for humanity. This understanding transforms how we read the early chapters of Genesis. We're not just encountering ancient history or primitive mythology. We're witnessing the beginning of God's redemptive plan for humanity. Every birth, every marriage, every new generation is a step forward in the unfolding drama of salvation. The role of women in early Genesis. The forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve also highlight the important but often overlooked role of women in the biblical narrative. While the genealogies focus on the male line, women were essential to the story. They were the mothers, the wives, the daughters who made human civilization possible. Eve herself is given the remarkable title, the mother of all living, Genesis 3:20. Her daughters, though unnamed, inherited this life-giving role. They were the ones who bore the children who would populate the earth. They were the ones who participated in the cultural mandate to fill and subdue the earth. In a narrative that could easily overlook women entirely, the mention of Cain's wife and the daughters of Adam and Eve serves as a reminder that God's plan has always included both men and women as full participants in his purposes for humanity. The Seth alternative. The story takes another turn with the birth of Seth, Adam and Eve's third named son. Genesis 4:25 records Eve's words at his birth, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." Seth represents a new beginning, a fresh start for the human race. Seth's line becomes the godly line, the line through which Noah and eventually Abraham, David, and Jesus would come. But even in Seth's line, we encounter the same reality. Sons and daughters, named and unnamed, all participating in God's plan for humanity. The daughters of Seth's line would have intermarried with the sons of Cain's line, and vice versa. The early chapters of Genesis don't describe completely separate populations, but rather different branches of the same family tree. The forgotten daughters served as bridges between these lines, ensuring that all of humanity remained connected to the original promise given to Adam and Eve. Archaeological and historical considerations. Modern archaeology and anthropology have provided insights that help us understand the world of Genesis. While we cannot prove the existence of specific individuals like Cain or his wife, the archaeological record does suggest that early human populations were small, and that rapid expansion and development occurred in the regions described in Genesis. The development of cities, the advent of metallurgy, the domestication of animals, all of these match the biblical timeline and geographical setting. The forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve lived in a world that was transitioning from the simplicity of Eden to the complexity of human civilization. This doesn't mean we should read Genesis as a modern scientific textbook, but it does suggest that the biblical narrative is grounded in real human experience and historical development. The forgotten daughters were real people living in a real world, facing real challenges as humanity learned to survive and thrive outside of Eden. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and follow us for more.